The Mexican mafia prison gang is involved in a lot of dirty business. Drugs, extortion, and murder. And to operate their schemes from behind bars, they need help from the outside world.
Chris Blatchford reports on an L.A. school teacher that police say is in the mafia's corner. Chris.
Well, she says it all began with writing a few letters to prison inmates and seemed very innocent. Now, as we see in this Fox Undercover report, investigators believe this middle-aged school teacher is a go-between for a cast of ruthless criminals. Junior high students stream into class trying to beat the bell. Their teacher, 49-year-old Margaret Farrell, waits for them at the door, where a sign in Spanish reads, "Welcome to the classroom." Here at the Fauché Learning Center in southwest Los Angeles, Farrell, a self-described Berkeley liberal, vegetarian, and pacifist, has been teaching English as a second language and history for 15 years. She is soft-spoken, motherly, and friendly.
Thank you so much.
But according to a secret Department of Corrections investigation, she is also a go-between, a runner for men like these. Members of a ruthless prison gang called the Mexican Mafia, also known as La M. Mundo is a former high-ranking mafia member who is now in the government witness protection program.
Mexican mafia members demonstrate their loyalty by the number of people that they kill.
15 years ago, MA member Raul Leon made an innocent teenager beg for his life on his hands and knees before blowing him away with a shotgun and stealing his car. Leon is now locked up for life here at the state's maximum security prison at Pelican Bay. In theory, corrections officials say he is unable to communicate with his Mexican mafia brothers.
Part of our policy, inmates are not to correspond with one another.
But from behind these walls, according to a corrections department source, Leon corresponded with 100 inmates in 12 different prisons to conduct Mexican mafia business.
It's extremely vital to keep everybody abreast of current affairs.
Investigative sources say Leon's letters ordered racial disturbances between blacks and Mexicans, such as this one at LA County Jail, set up hits and assaults in and outside prison walls, maintained mafia control over gang activity, and organized drug trafficking operations behind bars.
The drugs are their lifeline.
And when teacher Margaret Farrell leaves school each day, investigators say she helps keep that lifeline going, and does this by picking up mafia letters sent to her at different specified post office box mail drops miles from her home, helping to circumvent prison policies by rewriting, redirecting, or remailing coded Mexican mafia letters to other imprisoned MA members.
She's got to know that a Mexican mafia exists. She has to know that the people she's writing to are Mexican mafia members.
Here at Farrell's San Fernando Valley home 2 years ago, LAPD detectives found evidence of correspondence with 100 inmates. Relatively recent Leon letters describe the teacher as down for the cause, redirecting correspondence to dozens of MA members.
For them to be using her that often, she must be a very trusted runner.
Here at Pelican Bay alone, Farrell's list of MA pen pals have included a couple dozen killers, including Ruben Tupi Hernandez, who executed 3 people, and Jose Bat Marquez, a reputed MA hitman who paroled from Pelican Bay last summer. Fox News has learned he is now a suspect in the recent massacre of 2 Mexican Army drug fighters and the ambush of a Tijuana newspaper man. Also, law enforcement sources say Farrell had $3,000 in phone bills due to mafia soldiers calling her up from different prisons. And now, she often goes to a phone booth to make her calls.
If she's not receiving the phone calls at her own residence, then obviously she's trying to maintain an air of secrecy to her activities.
Law enforcement intelligence also reports Farrell has funneled money between MA members and associates, including drug profits. The school teacher would not consent to an on-camera interview, but told Fox News that she has corresponded with prison inmates for years, that none of her pen pals tell her they are in the Mexican mafia, and she doesn't ask, that she doesn't believe she is violating any laws or contributing to activities that would be harmful to anyone in any way.
She'd have to be pretty naive to not know that there was something going on.
On a city bus, headed home from school,
He's only got about 7 more years on.
a Fox undercover camera catches Farrell showing pictures of her mafia pen pals to some younger gang members. One flips her a gang sign, and she laughs. Obviously, she feels comfortable with them, and would later tell us she first got involved with former students who were with the 18th Street gang. She explained she felt sorry for them. It is a gang with close ties to La M. She says she is anti-violence, but her law enforcement detractors say this school teacher is, in fact, in the thick of it.
Whatever her personal motives are, I guess only she can answer.
Fox News has learned LAPD, a special law enforcement task force, and even the FBI have taken a close look at this junior high school teacher. She has never been charged or convicted of a crime. With one exception, she says. In the 1970s, she was arrested for blocking the entrance to a public building, a draft board.
Still keeping a watch on her?
That, you know, they're not going to share that information with us.
Okay. Chris,
Thanks, Chris.
thank you.
Another.
This is South Texas, and you're watching Fox Undercover video of the most dangerous new game in America, train hopping. This is Northern California, where teenager Lisa is making her first hop.
Right here, right here, right here!
She grabs on, stumbles, and is dragged under the train. She survives. Many train hoppers don't.
People have fallen underneath the train. They have been cut in half. Heads have been cut off. Arms have been cut off. Legs have been cut off. And this happens a lot.
And in a disturbing new trend, the danger is not just accidental. Now gangs are preying on the new breed of people who hop trains. One of the nation's largest rail lines reports 60,000 cases of train hopping last year alone. But nobody knows exactly how many hoppers are never even spotted. And they come from both sides of the track. These are Hollywood street kids. This one, called Generic, and his friend Andy are planning a cross-country hop.
Los Angeles, to Yuma, to Tucson, to El Paso, to Del Rio, San Antonio.
To help finance their trip, their friends, Jesse and Heather, panhandle along Hollywood's Walk of Fame. Some of their money goes to buy drugs, which Generic and Heather shoot up. Minutes later, they're flinging themselves onto a rolling freight train. On the same rails, but from the other side of the tracks, Glenn and his stepson Kevin are successful executives. On Fridays, they park their luxury cars and become hobos.
You just get this freedom and this excitement because once you're underway and the train's moving and it's going out across a beautiful landscape like this, you have nothing to look at but America, and you just say, wow.
They have a regular foursome of weekend hobos. They often share boxcars with other professional men and women. They ride the western rails from the mountains to the deserts. And instead of business cards, they exchange their hobo handles.
I'm Clickety-Clack.
Hey, Clickety-Clack refers to what?
Hobo here. Tactless. Mahone Kemp, Director of Onboarded Services.
They may think it's a lark, but train hopping is illegal. It is illegal to trespass on railroad property, illegal to climb on any freight car. Yet it's estimated that hundreds of thousands of people hop freight trains each year. And each year, hundreds of them die.
During the Great Depression, thousands of train hoppers rode these rails here to Southern California looking for a fresh start. I covered a tragedy here recently when a new generation of job seekers hopped a freight and were killed.
3 young brothers were hiding in a flat car carrying steel beams when the load suddenly shifted, the steel crushing the 3 young men, derailing the train.
The guy that passed away, he died in your arms?
Yeah, well, his head was in my hands. The rest of him is trapped under the steel.
This is just one of the tragedies, proving there is no safety zone in train hopping. Not when you're hanging on to a speeding megaton freight train. Jumping on a moving train can be deadly, but a stopped freight car isn't much safer. Skip is a real hobo who's hopped for decades. He knows every single freight starts with a jolt. But the last train still caught the veteran train hopper off guard.
In Topeka, Kansas, I fell off a train. That was good for 2 months in the hospital, another month in a nursing home, man.
Hopping off a train can be just as risky as hopping on.
As he was trying to jump down from the train, he apparently slipped, fell beneath the train, and it was at that time that the train rolled over his legs.
Even on the train, you're not safe. Rags and his 18-year-old son, Jonica, have hopped trains from New York to California. Jonica tried to show us on a parked train how to move safely from car to car. Another constant menace to hoppers, freight trains have schedules, freight cars don't. When Rags and Jonica caught a freight in December, all the enclosed box cars were suddenly sidetracked. They were left huddling in an open grain car where they nearly froze to death. In Georgia, this 7-year-old boy hopped a train this winter with friends, but was too scared to jump off. And he did freeze to death. And if the freight train doesn't kill you, other train riders might.
I have heard numbers as high as 75 that one single transient has killed.
Murderers and thugs preying on train hoppers, targeting the most vulnerable.
They started ripping off all my clothes. They pulled out another gun and shot me, then shot Dustin and Mike.
Tomorrow, from Fox Undercover, the story of a carload of killings. I'm Bob Donley, Fox News. Dawn in Emeryville, California. Teenage Lisa is about to hop her very first freight train.
Why are we traveling? You know, on one of those cars. Because it's there.
Her friends, Jason and Terry, are experienced hoppers, a new generation of part-time hobos. Everyone from street kids like these to Wall Street types with big cigars and cell phones. Riding the rails has always been lethal, but now there is a new threat. Predators who prowl the trains and yards, preying on the new hoppers.
You got too nice a sleeping bag, you're gonna die out here.
Minutes later, an engineer stops the train to warn Lisa about what can happen on a freight.
3 random guys got in a box car one day, going to Oregon. We found one guy, 5 miles later, found the other guy. Another 4 miles later, they found the other guy. They slit their throats.
Lisa disregards the warning and races to catch her first train.
Right here, right here, right here!
Train hopping, just part of how they live. They forage for food, panhandle for spending money, and what they can't beg or borrow, they steal. So a flying leap is just part of life on the edge. And on her first hop, Lisa is nearly killed. Her foot slips through the train ladder, and for a heartbeat, she hangs between life and death. Lisa escapes, but right here in Emeryville, on the very same tracks, another young hopper died.
I believe he was bludgeoned to death with a heavy trauma to the head.
20-year-old Michael Garfinkel, college student full of life and promise, hopped a freight train here. This train yard became his graveyard. Garfinkel allegedly murdered by Robert Silvera, a fellow hopper.
I believe we have 5 very strong cases against him in Kansas, Montana, Utah, California, and Florida.
Silvera pleaded guilty this month to the murders of 2 train hoppers, and he's a suspect in 28 other killings. Charles Boyd, CPA and church volunteer, Paul Wayne Matthews, husband and father of 2, and William Pettit, another man who left a family behind.
It's a parent's worst nightmare when we were advised of his death. But at least I feel Willie's at peace now. And we feel like that he didn't give his life in vain, because at least he brought Silvera down to where he wouldn't kill anybody else.
Silvera, known on the rails as Sidetrack, often leaves his calling card, a spider web and crushed skull, symbolic, investigators say, of his preferred method of slaughter.
He's a serial killer, and he should be documented as such.
He belongs to a notorious gang of hoppers called the Freight Train Riders Association.
They're kind of a gang that rides the rails and preys on other train riders, be it through robberies, through assaults, through homicides.
The FTRA, white supremacist emblem, can be found in freight yards all over America, and so can their unspeakable crimes.
FTRA members will actually hold someone down and let the train run over.
The FTRA is also suspected of derailing this freight train near Sprague, Washington. Toxic chemicals caught fire, threatening the entire town.
I heard they have a terrible habit of trying to get people who are on the train off of the train, whether or not it's moving.
Solo and his wife Sorrow have been riding freights since they were 14 years old. They steer clear of the FTRA. They know the dangers of hopping. And now they're riding into yet another danger, a distant freight yard. They don't call it the end of the line for nothing.
3 14-year-old Michigan kids also rode the rails to the end of the line. It was their first hop. They learned firsthand the first lesson of train hopping. Freights don't always stop where you want them to.
I try not to think about, all that stuff. I black it out.
It's been 7 months since Nicole and Dustin and their friend Mike hopped a freight for a 15-mile jaunt.
We was just gonna jump off the train. We didn't know it was gonna pick up that much speed.
Too fast to jump off, so the kids had to ride 50 miles to the Rust Belt city of Flint. They went looking for a phone to call home. 6 young men lured them into this park.
This just gang of them just started beating on me, and I was on the ground right here.
After beating and robbing the boys, the gang turned on Nicole.
I was begging them not to, and then they just attacked me and started beating me, and then they started ripping off my clothes.
From attack to execution.
They pulled out another gun and shot me, then shot Dustin and Mike.
Mike's head wound was fatal.
I have moments where every ounce of my being utterly aches for my son.
And in spite of these tragedies, thousands of people still train hop.
This is the last red-blooded American experience. This is the way to go.
It's history.
Tomorrow, what makes it so much fun that people risk so much danger?
Remember, always carry the Hobo Express card. Don't hop without it.
Life in the freight lane. I'm Bob Donnelly, Fox News.
I always say that's a piece of Americana you can't see from any other highway in America. It can be an adventure.
Cajon Kev, his father El Lobo, and their friends, fellow train hoppers, heading for the tiny California mountain town of Dunsmuir and the annual Railroad Days celebration. These guys are all successful businessmen. They can afford to travel first class, but they choose to ride like the man they've come to honor, the American hobo.
New York Ron, great Grand Duke of the East. Rode all the way from New York City.
Mobile Vern, his girlfriend Liz, and their buddies all hop trains to look for work. They're hobo commuters.
We're going to Gentilly Yard in New Orleans from Mobile, Alabama.
Hopping trains for work has its own kind of benefits package.
When it's going real fast and the wind blowing in your hair, just get away from people.
Duffy Littlejohn is in love with freight hopping. He says he knows why other people are too.
It's the wide open road, the last red-blooded American experience. This is the way to go.
It's history. It's fun.
Duffy has even written a how-to book, how to hop safely, how to evade the train cops, called Yard Bulls.
You have to go into mode commando every now and then. You'll notice we wear dark clothes and we travel light.
Duffy hopes his book will encourage more professional people like himself to train hop. That is ironic, considering his profession.
I'm a lawyer. I'm a criminal defense attorney.
The law Duffy is sworn to uphold frowns on train hopping. Here in Chicago, rail police use dogs to sniff out violators. In Laredo, Texas, they use helicopters and night vision scanners to try to halt the flood of hoppers.
They're climbing down.
You're not thinking about hopping a train, are you?
No, that's to a tugboat.
Mobile, Alabama sends a clear message to hoppers.
A trip to jail for him.
A yard bull even issues a citation to Byrne and friends just for being in the freight yard.
If you come back, I'm going to have to put you in jail.
Ignoring that warning, they hop a train 2 hours later.
See you later. See you in New Orleans.
Now they run into yet another hardship. A sudden shower drives Byrne deep inside the dark train car into what they call the rat hole. The weather is always a problem for freight hoppers. At any time of the year, an open freight car at night is painfully cold.
Train food,
Food is another big worry on the rails. Carry too much, you're in trouble. Carry too little, you're in trouble.
One time we were on a train, we had all this instant coffee and some sugar and some like whatever. We had no water and stuff like that. We ended up eating coffee whitener at the end of it, man. Like, it was like, oh yeah.
The most constant problem for freight train hoppers, the ever-changing train schedules. Remember Byrne and his friends? They hopped a freight to New Orleans.
Welcome to Mississippi.
Byrne isn't the only experienced hobo to get rerouted. We met Wrong Way Willie in Los Angeles as he was making one of his frequent hops back to Oklahoma. Why is he called Wrong Way? 20 minutes later, it was obvious. To solve the old problem of schedule changes, these weekend hobos apply modern technology. They communicate with other hoppers by two-way radio and cell phone.
El Lobo, Clickety-Clack, and Cajon Kev here calling for Boxcar Billy.
They even carry scanners so they can eavesdrop on yard bulls and control towers.
Stealth at all times. You never want to have your scanner or your personal communication device overheard by a bow and brakeman.
Armed with the railroad's own timetable, they figure they're home free.
55 minutes from now, we will catch a freight train. It is 6:31 p.m. right now.
I'm going to take the low end, 35 minutes.
They were both way off by about 6 hours.
It's now almost 11 o'clock. These lights down here could be a train. We certainly hope so.
They finally straggle home, looking for a new way to travel.
I need a cab for 4 people.
So why do people do this? It is obviously dangerous, it is uncomfortable, and it certainly is illegal. But to a lot of people, really, this is what America is all about. An earlier America that was rich in adventure, limitless in beauty, boundless in freedom.
Well, stood in the Atlantic Ocean on the wide Pacific shore. Heard the queen of flowering mountains to the south hill by the shore. She's long and tall and handsome, she's loved by one and all. Modern combination called the Wabash Cannonball.
Here's to Daddy Claxton, may his name forever stand.
Oh, yes.
May it always be remembered on the ports throughout this land. His earthly race is over and the curtains round him fall. Carry him home to victory on the Wabash Cannonball.
Listen to the jingle of the land roar.
It's the most volatile of all police standoffs. Officers on one side, armed and dangerous suspects barricaded on the other. In this Fox Undercover report, Bob Donnelly takes you inside the most terrifying component of any barricade when innocent hostages get caught in the crossfire.
From his barricaded home, a crazed gunman suddenly comes out shooting. Another barricade, and this time, cops have to blast their way in, not knowing how much firepower is behind the door. Workplace barricades, where disgruntled employees take it out on their hostages. Or workplace robberies, where hostages get caught in the barricade crossfire. Louisiana police interrupt Elton Woods robbing a bank. He grabs a hostage, Beverly Petrolia, and demands a car. Police give it to him. Experts say that was the right thing to do.
Money can be recovered, perpetrators can be recaptured, but the policy must be that life of the innocent third party is the most important thing.
A truck blockade finally stops Woods and his captive 50 miles later. Woods is belligerent, gun to his hostage's head one moment, firing wildly the next. Sharpshooters take up position. Now Beverly isn't the only innocent at risk.
Some of these weapons can go as far as a half a mile, and so it endangers people a half a mile away.
Deputies calculate the risk and take it. Incredibly, the bullet hits Woods' pistol, ricochets into his throat, and kills him. Beverly Petrolia collapses, traumatized, but otherwise unhurt. A chillingly similar standoff in Venezuela. This time, the robber's hostage is pregnant. The gunman demands a car and a rifle.
You don't give them weapons, and you don't give them other hostages. And another key is that you don't exchange hostages.
But trained officers anywhere will talk about anything, at least until the sharpshooters arrive.
I've talked about giving people automatic weapons. I'll talk about giving somebody a nuclear weapon if they want to.
I'll kill the woman, he screams, and police believe him. Again, the high-risk option saves the hostage. In Arkansas, a very different standoff. Sean Hintz is trying to drown his 2-year-old nephew. When talk fails here, officers shoot Hintz in the shoulder. Crisis management expert David Swink explains.
Police are taught to use the least lethal means of intervention as necessary.
From their angle, police were also worried about hitting the toddler.
I think everybody, at least on an unconscious level, sees their own kid out there.
But even after he's wounded, Hintz won't let the boy go.
Help us! I got it! Get away! Come on, baby, get away from me!
Finally, officers tear the child loose.
Stop this, baby!
Hey, sweet baby! Hey! How you doing?
Another barricade, this one in San Diego, starts with tragedy and seems destined to end with more bloodshed. 2 officers shot when they answer a call at this apartment building. One of them is dead. Lonnie Brewer, a newlywed. After a brief siege and some tear gas, suspect Gary Tashner, with a history of drug and weapons violations, comes out, gun blazing. A police dog distracts Tashner long enough for sharpshooters to draw a bead. Tashner goes down, killed in the showdown he provoked.
I think we're starting to see an increase in people who want to die in the spotlight. They want to be famous. They want their 15 minutes.
Think about this for a minute. Statistically speaking, a police officer has a far less chance of being killed on the job than anyone else does. Homicide is right now the #2 leading cause of death in the workplace. And if you're a woman, the risk is far greater. Larry Darnell Jones shows off his hostages, Ernest and Jean Wiggins.
They're on the corner of the building, Kevin, right near the teller machine.
The couple were cleaning this North Carolina bank when they stumbled on Jones, who was planning to rob it. Officers responded. Jones shot and killed Sheriff Jerry Beach.
Hey, y'all think I'm a joke, don't you?
After a 9-hour barricade, cops stormed the bank.
Well, I'm not sure why they stopped negotiating at that point, but it certainly was a risky assault to go in there with the hostage still there.
The hostage, Jean Wiggins, is killed in the crossfire. Her husband is wounded, as is the gunman, Larry Darnell Jones. Jones later commits suicide in his jail cell. In Honolulu, the deadliest kind of barricade, the disgruntled worker. Recently fired John Miranda returns to his company with a shotgun. He wounds his ex-boss, who makes a desperate escape. Then Miranda takes 5 former co-workers hostage. Police call in the sharpshooters.
A lot of the workplace violence episodes that we've seen recently where people go back to seek revenge, they're not going back to take hostages, they're going back to take victims.
Miranda tapes a shotgun to Tom McNeil's head, and he whispers, "I'm gonna count down from a minute, then end with a gun bang."
Yo, yo, yo! Get out of there!
Neil waits till the countdown reaches 15, then makes a desperate move. Miranda fires twice. He misses. The police fire twice. They don't. Violence in the workplace has become so serious, David Swing's company is now teaching people how to handle it. This video shows part of a 16-hour hostage standoff simulation used to instruct police, businesses, and the news media.